from Clarkston, Michigan, the greatest city in the world. It's the Jose Aliaga Show. Jose Aliaga knows everyone. Get to know him as he interviews some of the most fascinating people from the greater Independence Township area. And now, broadcasting from the studios at Clarkston High School, the home of the state champion Wolves, here's Jose Aliaga.
Hello, welcome to the Jose Aliaga Show. Today we have a special guest, Jonathan Ettinger. He's an ideologically libertarian, political independent author, consultant, and toys-run candidate for office. He has worked on many campaigns, from local to state and federal races, and various ballot initiatives. He holds a degree in economics from the University of Michigan, and he's currently working on his second book, soon to be complete. And actually I have we have a Jonathan here. And Jonathan, I believe this is a copy of your book, right?
That's my first book. Completed that a few years ago, yeah. First, thank you for having me, Jose.
Sure, absolutely. And what this book is about, I think, is neither living nor dead. So
yeah,
it's about?
It's my attempt to explain to people the United States Constitution in simple, plain terms they can understand. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, it's also clarifying what's actually in the Constitution versus what's not, and what people think there is.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah, I was reading the book. Very, very interesting to actually helps a lot to explain the articles and about the Constitution. As you know, we are close to next, it's coming very soon, presidential election, mm-hmm. and we're going to have primaries in both parties, in the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. And it's very interesting how the how many candidates is coming up for this primary election for.
Oh yeah,
this,
there's always a lot more names than actually run though.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's going to be probably more people coming, but we were talking about actually. You told me there was the CPAC convention mm-hmm. in Washington D.C. and I think you had the result for it. What do you think about the results? I mean, who was first, by the way?
Well, and I'll just reference this right here, but yeah, the top vote getter was almost 26%, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky.
Okay.
Second place, mm-hmm. Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin, mm-hmm. with 21. That's nearly 50% of the vote went to those two people alone.
Okay.
Once you expand to the top four, bring in Ted Cruz and Ben Carson, mm-hmm. that's over half the vote right there, which leaves you all these other candidates who barely even showed up.
Mm-hmm. But according to what we see in the past, the CPAC basically gives you a feeling how it's going to end the primary? It's a good tool to measure how it's going to be? Or?
It's a nice sales pitch popularity tool more than anything. It doesn't always translate into anything specific.
And who's the people that goes to the CPAC? Who's the people that goes there and vote for that?
In the past few years, it's largely younger people because they have the time to attend. Mm-hmm. But really, it's a lot of the more committed political activists, the one who really spend most of their waking hours fighting for their causes and for their preferred candidates.
Oh, so, okay. So there's not just college Republicans, it's also other activists.
Oh yeah, it's far more diverse than that.
It's very diverse. So you mentioned Rand Paul is leading this, the straw poll, and so he's a senator from Kentucky. Mm-hmm. What are the qualifications you think that make him the best candidate?
Well, I mean, this is from a personal bias perspective, mm-hmm. but I mean, I'm definitely what one would call one of the liberty movement people. Mm-hmm. Ideologically, I want limited government, as little government as possible, mm-hmm. as little government involvement in my life as possible. Mm-hmm. And Rand Paul shares many of my views.
Okay, now, when I was introducing you, many of the people probably don't know what libertarian is. Okay. What is libertarian?
Libertarian, simply put, is someone who genuinely believes in limited government from a, how do I put this, real principled, civically minded point of view. It's not just limited government by personal preference of what they want government to do, but they believe in individual rights and they want government to reflect those rights and protection of those rights for the individual. Ultimately, a libertarian would almost be an anarchist if they all thought that we could actually do well without having any government.
And what is the difference between a libertarian with a Tea Party?
Well, Tea Party is a little harder to define, and it depends on who you ask. I mean, initially, the resurgence of Tea Party as an identity came in 2009 when a guy basically called for a revolution of sorts. He was just saying, remember the Tea Party, why are you putting up with all this? From then, people kind of hijacked that name. Some took it to mean taxed enough already, which I really hate acronyms. Other people, it just becomes more of a, they're just anti-Obama or anti-Democrat. So
I see.
Tea Party's too broad. It depends on who you're asking.
I see. Well, back to that question. So, you, according to what you showed me, the statistics of what happened in the convention for the CPAC show that Senator Ron Paul from Kentucky is leading this, and you believe he's qualified because he's experiencing in the Senate, correct?
Well, it's not so much a question of qualifications as it is just ideological positions. You really have to look at this in terms of what do you believe government should be doing, how involved do you think government should be, and which candidate shares your views.
Okay, but do you believe experience should be a factor?
Experience is overrated. George W. Bush was governor of Texas for a while, and look what he did while he was in office.
Okay, well, Obama also was a senator for 2 years, and he became president. And,
oh yeah.
And look what's going on. I mean,
and that just that proves my point. Experience or lack of experience isn't really the defining factor.
Well, I mean, it depends. The point. For example, I don't know about Ron Paul as a personal experience. I agree, ideology is very important for our country. But in primaries, when I see primary, for example, who was the last Kentucky senator who ran for president was back in the 1800s, Henry Clay. Henry Clay, okay. But Henry Clay, listen, the experience he has. I mean, he has tons of experience, and he was well qualified, ideologically right, but he couldn't win the primary.
Yeah, but...
And it was the people, actually, the one who beat him was a general, Zacharias Taylor. He won just by being popular, not by ideology.
You can't really compare the two, though. It was a whole different political beast than what we have now.
So, but now you think it's not about popularity, it's more about...
Oh no, popularity still factors, and that's why I'm saying where I experience isn't necessarily the defining factor. You could have someone who had been in Congress, a governor, and numerous other things, but if they can't sell themselves and their positions to the people, they're nowhere. They're not going to have anything.
I see. Well, I mean, all right. So what do you think about Scott Walker?
Walker's got a good background, and he has a proven track record in Wisconsin to point to. But in a bigger picture perspective, he's still fairly unknown beyond the more politically minded people. So he still has a long way to go to build broader name ID with the rest of the public at large. And also, well, what he's done and accomplished in Wisconsin has put a giant target on his back from his opposition. The campaign's not even close to starting yet. He's barely making public appearances. And the far left is already attacking him in the press. Okay,
but I mean, as far as experience, he has experience as a governor.
Oh yeah, no, he's an experienced executive, and he's done some good things.
But the experience I always talk about a candidate is how to create jobs. Is the person done it before? And it's important in today's economy, someone have experience.
Except that a governor doesn't compare to a president in that respect. That's an important aspect for a governor when you look at in terms of what state government does regarding the state economy. Ideally, the president doesn't have that kind of interaction on a national scale. In fact, the federal government shouldn't even be that involved in the economy. So that's really only a selling point to people who think government should be involved like that.
Okay, well, but I always believe that having a governor that works with the private sector and works in the public sector and working with the private sector to create jobs is a good thing. They have experience and skill to bring into Washington. Because also the president deals with the Congress.
True.
And when you're a governor, you deal with the Congress, and when you have Republicans and Democrats, and you need to negotiate with them to be able to accomplish something.
Now, see, now that correlates better because his experience working with his legislature in Wisconsin more closely aligns with how he'd have to work with the Congress if he's president.
Right.
Now, he's faced a lot of opposition from his own legislature. Look at that point where they were fighting over right to work, and many of the Democrat members actually took off out to Illinois in protest. Yeah, he's been there, he stands his ground, but he's also able to work with people, and that's important. But from a federal perspective, you have to remember, Congress is supposed to be the one driving the bus, so to speak, not the president.
Now, what about Governor Jeb Bush? Do you think he have a chance?
He definitely has the money and the connections. His first major hurdle is going to be Bush fatigue, to put it bluntly. He has to get over the image people have of his family because of his brother and his father, who both served for him.
But some people saying that Jeb Bush has more chance and more experience than the two names that you just mentioned before, we talked before.
But what does experience mean, though?
Well, he worked in education, improved education in Florida. He started this voucher. It was something to do with education and increase. He had a national foundation for education, and he's very dedicated about education. And he increased jobs in Florida. The economy were good during his time, and that the name. I mean, he have a name ID.
Yeah, but see, name ID is going to be the big factor, though, because all those things you pointed to. First, how well he did those depends on who you're asking, first off. Second, survey the country. Look at any other person who's been a governor of any state in the last decade, and you can probably find similar qualifications.
Well, also, for November election, in the last two elections, we couldn't get as much of Hispanic votes to be able to carry the election on November.
Yeah, and that's going to be fairly important.
And now, it will, because we lost Florida 2 times. And we know win California since, Ronald Reagan won in the 1980, 1984, and George Sr. won in actually 88.
Yeah.
But after that, we never carry California anymore.
Yeah, George Sr. basically won as Reagan's 3rd term, though. So that's something else entirely.
Well, but now, Jeb Bush, his wife is a Mexican, Columba Bush. He has 3 kids, and the 3 of them are fluent in Spanish. I mean, they speak Spanish, and they are working with the Hispanic community for many years. And that I think that will, I mean, you imagine having Jeb Bush with his wife campaigning around the southern states and California and so forth. I think that maybe carry extra vote the Republicans we need.
His main benefit from that will be in Florida primarily, but even then, if Marco Rubio gets involved, that cuts into his Hispanic base.
In the primary, though.
Yeah.
But I talk about November. Who will be the strongest candidate in November?
Assuming he gets the nomination, well, that all depends, though. Are Hispanics going to vote for someone just because of some Hispanic affiliation? Or are there particular things about government that they want?
Well,
I personally don't like to classify and group people
no,
by
I don't either.
demographics.
But the show statistics is how the candidates appeal to the voters. And in the last 2 elections, Obama, the Democrats carried the Afro-American vote and the Hispanic vote. But in 2014 election, they lost seats that were like Colorado. They have a strong base of Hispanic voters, and they vote Republican. And I believe that the Republican Party want to keep that tendency going up. So by having someone that, not just his wife, but someone who speaks Spanish fluently, like Jeb Bush, and has been working great with the Hispanic community, may help. And that's something that the Democrats probably worry about, because they worry about who's the strongest right now. They can face Hillary Clinton or whoever wins the
But see, now that's not to say, though, that Jeb Bush is the only one who can reach out to Hispanic voters.
Right.
If you really look at it, Rand Paul has done a lot in the last couple years to reach out to all those bases you mentioned, the ones that Republicans generally are too afraid to go near. So ultimately, Rand Paul is reaching beyond the normal base and growing that support, showing people that Republicans aren't what they've been portrayed, and really taking this guy as an individual. So I don't think Jeb Bush has a lock on all of that.
Well, I like Rand Paul. I think he's smart. He's good to communicate. He gets to the point and he works hard. I see his work at the Senate. He filibustered a few bills and they were interesting a few years ago. And I think he will be a good candidate for the Republican Party. But who else is running? Let's see. What about Mitt Romney? You think he's out of the race completely?
I'd say 98% yes. In fact, tell you what, let's look at it this way. Let's go back about a month, okay? Something Glenn Beck talked about. Now, I'm not going to say I'm the biggest Glenn Beck fan, but this is just point of reference. He talked to a guy, a quote, political insider.
Okay.
Someone he wouldn't name, but that supposedly we'd all recognize and trust. And this guy had said, ultimately, the race is going to come down to 4 people. Romney, Huckabee, Jeb Bush, and Rand Paul. Now, Romney's already said, okay, I'm out. But that's not to say, though, if this whole thing turns into a giant mess between now and early 2016, Romney might still step in to try to save it. I don't see it happening, but I'm not saying it's guaranteed to be out of the cards.
Now, you said before that experience at this point is not important for being a president of the United States.
Well, I'm not saying it's not important, it's just not the most critical thing. And I think people too often, too easily overemphasize experience in terms of look at what office I've held, look at what jobs I've held. But that doesn't always translate into the position and actually going to work.
I believe, and I was talking with some people around the township here in Independence, that one of the scarcity that we have right now is foreign policy, because we have Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran having nuclear weapons, and increasingly every year. And we actually have been decreased in the last 6 years. And I don't feel right with this course where America is going in foreign policy. And I think the next president has to be aware about this. And we need someone with experience also, to me, in foreign policy, besides local.
Well,
we need to fix jobs, the economy, agree with that, put the right in place, the right course, but also foreign policy is important. And
understanding foreign policy, though, is more important.
Right, and what is the philosophy that Rand Paul, do you know?
His largely, although I'm not going to say completely, matches up with his father's, which is one of, we really shouldn't be involved all over the world in everybody's own affairs. We need to take care of our home base first. But that's not to say that he's going to leave everything to just, fend for themselves. Now, when you talk about foreign policy, look at where we are now and compare that with what Mitt Romney said going into the 2012 election. Romney hadn't served beyond being governor of Massachusetts, and yet he was right on top of what he saw coming in terms of foreign affairs. And that's exactly where we are. So really, it's understanding foreign policy and what your approach is to it that matters most. I mean, if experience mattered, then John McCain would be your ideal candidate.
Right. And I think he was a good candidate. But
Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one.
All right. No, it's good to agree or disagree. That's why we're having an interview. But all right, you mentioned now, we were talking Huckabee. Why Mike Huckabee now?
Well, see, that's the thing. I mean, I can't say why anyone else would name him as being one of the top guys. He has a lot of appeal to the more social conservative area of the Republican Party. And, you can't write them off, but you can't make them everything either. They're not as large as what they seem to be. They just talk more, and they're a lot more louder than others. But at the same time, if all you're going to do is campaign on social positions, which is more or less what a Mike Huckabee or, say, a Rick Santorum does, you're also alienating a lot of voters. Remember, this is POTUS, President of the United States, not Preacher of the United States. So if Santorum or Huckabee hope to be in this race, and Santorum's already declared, they really need to get somewhere beyond just the social positions.
Now, do you think Rick Santorum will have a chance? I mean, he was second last primary. He was building up momentum. He started with less than 1%, 2%, and then...
He's more of a stick it out till the end kind of candidate. That's what he did in 2012. But he effectively was in 2012 what Huckabee was in 2008. He had his little niche there. He had his group of supporters. and he just ran out the clock.
What about
he
him?
never really had a realistic chance.
So you don't think ideologically is as good as Rand Paul? His ideology as a
Rand Paul, with his positions, if nothing else, can appeal to independent voters as well as the more libertarian liberty movement kind of activist end. That's something Rick Santorum shut the door on a long time ago.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think he has a good support for people from Right to Life, people that are pro-life.
Oh yeah, and that's fine.
I think also that he have experience in Washington.
A lot of those base, though, his Right to Life, his social conservatives, are 9 times out of 10 still going to vote Republican no matter what. If a Republican's going to win this thing in 2016, they need to broaden their support. They need to be able to reach independents, undecideds, and like I said, the more liberty-leaning people.
Okay.
I mean, it's a whole different atmosphere now than what it was in 2012 versus 2008 or anything before that.
No, Ben Carson. What do you think about Ben Carson?
Nice guy. I respect his background. He's got a few positions I can agree with, a few not, because he seems to take his positions on a case-by-case basis, doesn't really have any kind of ideological grounding that I can point to. But in the long run, I'm sorry, he's going to be more like Herman Cain. He's going to be a lot of talk, then as soon as the primaries start, he's going to drop out. I swear he will not run.
A lot of people like Ben Carson. He wrote 3 books. He came from, I mean, he born in Detroit. He grew up in Detroit, and he became a successful doctor, and he understands different backgrounds. And I think he's a very good candidate. But
Jose,
you know politics. You are a political analyst.
Remember, Herman Cain still had that same kind of appeal going into 2012, and Herman Cain still dropped out before the first primary actually happened.
Okay. Well,
who's popular now just has more to do with the fact that we're not near the primaries, the field's wide open, and everything's still speculative. It's all ideas and talk, nothing else.
Okay. All right. What about some people? Well, you mentioned actually John Hushman, former governor, right? From
John Huntsman Jr. from Utah.
From Utah. Why do you think he would be a good candidate?
Well, I mean, he's not my favorite. Let's put it this way. I consider myself libertarian, small L. I believe in limited government, certain principles. I don't agree across the board with Huntsman. I didn't agree across the board with Romney. Unlike a lot of my contemporaries, I wasn't completely against Romney either. To me, Huntsman has a lot of the same pros and appeal that Romney did, but doesn't come with the immediate baggage of having to try to explain quote-unquote Romney care or being called a flip-flopper. Ultimately, Huntsman had a good chance, but he just didn't have enough name ID in 2012 or enough money to go past the first couple primaries.
But how you think he's gonna, if he win the nomination or he's dealing in the primary, how he will overcome that he got appointed by President Obama to be the ambassador of China and after that primary actually?
But see, that's just the thing though. That will actually grow more support at one end in terms of showing that he's not strictly partisan and he's more about putting the country first than what it's going to lose in terms of those hardcore, how could you be with a Democrat kind of people. It's actually going to work to his benefit. He's more of a, for lack of a better term, centrist. And going forward, that could work for him because he's a particular type of centrist where he can appeal from this end and that end at the same time. So he will be able, I'm not saying he can necessarily have the same appeal as what Rand Paul could, but he'd definitely do a lot better than someone like Santorum.
Now, okay, but do you think he will beat the Democrat nominee on November like Hillary Clinton or Elizabeth Warren?
That remains to be seen, because I mean, on the Democrat side, it's almost certain that Hillary Clinton's going to run. There are a lot of the far extreme left that would love to have Elizabeth Warren run. The only way you're going to sell Elizabeth Warren to the country is if you have enough people that blindly vote Democrat just to vote Democrat, period. And not saying that couldn't or wouldn't happen, but that's what it would take.
Elizabeth Warren, what kind of left that she is? She's like Olinsky, she's like Fidel Castro, or Chavez,
okay.
I don't know.
I wouldn't go quite that far.
I mean, you're
that
talking
puts us
like
into a whole new thing.
All right.
She's, I mean, if I'm going to draw a line, she's slightly to the right of Bernie Sanders, and I'll leave it at that. So,
okay.
But I mean, Huntsman, we don't know because we haven't seen him perform in the primaries. We don't see what his public perception is. We don't know where it is. It's too early to call who could beat whom.
All right, but well, what do you? I mean, I hear some Tea Party, some people will like to see Sarah Palin on November against Hillary Clinton, and they believe that Sarah Palin will have more chances to defeat Hillary Clinton on November election 2016. Why not? So Hillary, you think is going to beat?
The big assumption in that one is that they're looking at woman versus woman and trying to nullify Hillary's supposed claim on the women vote. Again, I don't look at people by groups. I don't think women, many of them will, but not necessarily all, but I don't think women are just going to flock to Hillary because, hey, I want a woman president. It could happen. I'd hope it doesn't because that's one of the stupidest, worst reasons to vote for anyone ever. You really need to look at someone's politics and policies, not their demographics. So yeah, I mean, people are counting on Palin, woman versus woman. But Palin has so much baggage from how she was portrayed in 2008. She has such minimal appeal beyond her hardcore base. Not going to work.
Well, both of them have experience. I mean, in my office, and
but again, experience not going to cut it. That is not going to be able to get over all the negatives.
I tell you, I think Sarah Palin has bigger name recognition than some other names that we mentioned today.
Oh yeah, but that's only because she came out of nowhere and was the VP candidate in 2008, and she hasn't left the television since then. That's why. Name ID is not everything.
But and we see history back in primaries, back and back, even for the last couple hundreds, popular candidates always, be on TV like Ronald Reagan or...
Here's the difference. She's well known, but that doesn't mean she's popular. They're not the same thing.
Oh, okay. well, for sure we have tons of people, potential candidates, and it's going to be tough to...
It's a long time before we really get anywhere.
Yeah, we're building a good, conversation right now and some good assumptions. But what about some people would like to see Rick Snyder?
No comment.
Why? I mean, he has better record in job creation than I know you don't care much about that, but I do, about Scott Walker. He's actually done better Scott Walker because he took Michigan in worse shape than Scott Walker did.
Yeah, but Walker also has a better, let's just say for lack of a better term, public perception ID with him. He's seen as a guy who took on his political enemies and won. Snyder made changes, but Snyder essentially walked in with Republican majorities in both chambers in Michigan, and then they said, hey, we're going to do these things and see how it works. There are still many Republicans, hardcore Republicans, who do not like Rick Snyder.
Well, but they elect Snyder, and also Snyder keep the majority, which is very important to tell that the most of people. Now, you talk about before appeal, how to actually use this. Then John Hushman, we get Democrats to appreciate him, that he showed that he can work with other side of the aisle. So Snyder is actually doing really well then.
Well, here's the thing though. You bring up Snyder's reelection, but how much of that was pro-Snyder versus anti-Shower? You see what I'm saying? You can't say Snyder's reelection was completely because of Rick Snyder himself.
Well, but he got independent voters that they said.
Some. There were also a lot of voters who just outright didn't show up in 2014.
Well, we don't know exactly that, but it was. I think it was a good election. I mean, I think that it was pretty normal for a governor election.
Yeah,
in presidential election, you got more turnout than governor election.
Walker's fight in Wisconsin made national news and got him some national recognition. Rick Snyder is still a virtual unknown, and compared to other virtual unknowns, has a much tougher road to go. Snyder's best off focusing on Michigan, finishing out his term, and if he really wants to, then let's look at 2020 or something, maybe.
Okay, but now, I mean, it's, for example, George Pataki, former governor of New York, running, and I think Rick Snyder has a bigger name than George Pataki right now, even than John Hushman.
No, well, it depends on who you're asking, okay? Because remember, Huntsman did run in 2012, and that brought him to attention to a lot of people who hadn't heard of him before. Pataki, still largely unknown outside of major Republican circles and New York. And when it comes to Pataki, I'll point again, CPAC straw poll. Pataki, dead last out of all the candidates voted for. He tied Lindsey Graham. He came in lower than both undecided and the other vote.
Okay.
He would have to literally buy his name ID and buy his way in. I'm not saying he couldn't, but he's trying to fight for that money with the likes of Jeb Bush, and Jeb Bush is not going to let him have it.
Okay, good point. Well, I mean, as you know, Hillary Clinton in 2008, she said she had a connection. She could raise the money. Her husband do a couple phone calls. She can raise the money. And Obama, when the primary in 2000, after he got elected senator, nobody would say, okay, this guy, well, I mean.
She got outmaneuvered.
It was difficult
on the
for Obama.
left. Obama came out, let's put it this way.
Nowhere.
Obama was everything and nothing at the same time in 2008, okay? They sold his personal history of, wow, and look at his rise, he's such a great guy.
Yeah.
He said little, committed to little. Meanwhile, Hillary's seen as, yeah, 8 years of Bill, no, we're not gonna go there again. Mm-hmm. So no, once Barack Obama got in the race, Hillary had almost no chance.
But you're saying that, I mean, okay. Not just bringing something that happened just recently, because you said George Pataki, no chance at all. But the guy was, I mean,
it's a different comparison, though. Pataki doesn't have these sales points to bring himself across to Republicans the same way Obama could with the Democrats.
Okay. Now, if we take a look of, you bring two names from the Democrats, I am actually the two are women. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and current senator from Massachusetts, right? Is that current senator?
Elizabeth Warren, yeah.
Yeah, both are a woman. Do you think they will be the top?
Well, I mean, Hillary's pretty much guaranteed to run. Warren's speculative. The Democratic field beyond that, not too many names have been tipped at this point. I also lean more Republican, so I'm personally not that worried about it.
So you think Hillary don't have a chance to beat whoever of those guys that we talked today, win the Republican nominee, or become the Republican nominee?
There are way too many factors involved. I'm honestly, I'm not going to speculate. I have my preferences. I see what I see as positives and negatives for various candidates, but I am not in any way, shape, or form going to make a prediction of this person's going to run away with it. This person could beat that person.
So now, do you think Jeb Bush, do you think it's going to be very difficult for him to become the nominee for the Republican Party?
His first major fight is just the fact that his last name is Bush.
Because it's the last two presidents were Bush.
He needs to be able to get out of that. I have no other way to put it.
So it's very difficult for Republicans to accept that the last three, if he became the nominee and become the president, I think he will be the last three presidents, Republican presidents.
Yeah, the last three Republicans were all from the Bush family, yeah.
So it's going to be difficult. Now, if Clinton get it,
yeah, but look what that would do to us.
And then who's going to run next?
Bush,
Chelsea.
Clinton, Bush. Oh, at least we had Obama in between and then another Clinton. No. A lot of Americans are fed up and just don't like the idea of these political dynasties to begin with. So.
True, but I see. I hear good things about Jeb Bush's work, and I know that money is an important factor for every race, any race. And but I also have to validate what you just said. It's going to be difficult for Bush or Clinton to win.
He has his connections. He has the money he can draw from. But you don't know what connections the other candidates may or may not have and what they might be able to pull from.
So for you, in the Republican primary, it's going to be basically Ron Paul against Scott Walker.
I mean, I'll say it right now. As long as Rand Paul actually declares candidacy, boom. That's my guy. I don't see anyone else getting involved who I could prefer
But you mentioned maybe Senator Marco Rubio from Florida come over and boom.
I would never support Rubio.
Never would support Rubio.
Never support Rubio.
Even though
if nothing else, his position on national security, let's put it this way, Rand Paul wants to do away with things like the NSA and the Patriot Act.
Okay.
Marco Rubio is the one of the main sponsors to keep these things going. In fact, no, you know what? There is one name I would like better than Rand Paul. Justin Amash from the Michigan 3rd. But Amash is never going to run. He's staying in the House.
How do you know that?
I know. I know Justin. He's doing good work. His allegiance is to the people in his district, and he's doing his job. He is concerned about doing his job. Period.
No, I actually met Justin a couple of times. He came to Clarkson. Actually, he was here supporting another candidate that was running for the U.S. House. That was Tom McMillan back in.
Oh yeah, no, McMillan's a good guy.
Yeah, and then I saw him. I think he came one time to Independence Township, and I think he's a good candidate, good guy. Yeah, I think he's.
It's too early for him to do something like a presidential run, and especially when you consider the field he'd be going against. We can think down the road maybe a run for him, but for now he's best off just staying in the House.
In the House.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, so you think he would be the best candidate for the Republican?
Well, in terms of my personal preferences and what I want out of a candidate, absolutely.
Justin Amash.
Whether or not that can be sold well to everyone and win him some primaries, that's a whole other thing.
So since we're talking about the U.S. Congress, what about Ted Cruz? We forget about Ted Cruz. I think he's well-liked for some...
He started out as a guy very much like Rand Paul. He's a little harder to pin down right now. I'm not against him. I'm just not overwhelmingly for him. I mean, if you were to tell me that he is down the line the same as Rand Paul, except he happens to be Hispanic and from Texas, I'm still going with Rand Paul.
Okay.
Period.
But is Ted Cruz with the primary and he's facing Hillary, will you support Senator
Oh yeah,
Ted
no,
Cruz?
I'm not against Ted Cruz.
Okay.
Let's put it this way. It's very few candidates that I would absolutely, if they were the Republican nominee, that I would sit back and say, I'm sorry, I can't support that, I can't do it. They exist, and I wouldn't do it. But I mean, it all comes down to which people do I prefer more than not, which ones do I like more than not. I mean, going back to what I said earlier, unlike some people in my similar political area, I actually liked Romney more than I disliked him. Where I disliked him were some major issues, but I at least liked him enough to where I could say, yeah, I'll go with it. And that's where I am about guys like John Huntsman as well. I like more than don't like. Cruz, I definitely like more than don't like.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I understand your positions. I mean, but who will be now? I mean, it's a very difficult question maybe for you, but who is the best candidate for the Democrat Party nominee for you? We're talking about Republican, but what about the Democrat? Do you think that maybe is someone that...
Okay, in terms of who I'd want to see elected, obviously I want a Democrat who can appeal to Democrats, but no one else. So right now, my best pick would be Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. So what about...
Mostly because he would make the biggest mess out of that you could possibly see, and I think it would be hilarious.
So it's the best for the Democrat.
The guy got called out in the 1988 election for being a plagiarist, okay? Come on.
Really?
Remember, he ran for president back in '88 and didn't get anywhere. Most people forget that.
Now he's vice president.
Yeah. Doesn't mean much. People elected Obama, not Biden.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Okay, well, before we finish, I want to get right. So your prediction is Ron Paul is going to win the primary?
Well, I'm not going to go with a prediction. I'm just saying he's my best hope.
The best hope. Okay. What is your second best hope?
For me, I'd call that, you know what? I think I would actually put Walker slightly ahead of Huntsman or Cruz.
Okay.
I think, I mean, if not Rand Paul, I think I could give some consideration to Scott Walker.
Okay. Now, what is your prediction?
No, I'm not giving
No
that.
prediction.
No,
No.
we're way too early for that.
Too early for prediction.
Way too early.
Okay. Okay, John, but thank you. Thank you so much for coming
thank you,
today.
Jose.
It was very interesting and very good opinions. And I think today probably people learned a lot about the Republican primary, at least who are the candidates. You give a good background about each of them. And I
At least they know what my opinions are. That's what. So.
Yeah, well, Independence Township is very conservative township. People here cares about a primary, and I know it's going to be very soon, primary one. Okay, well, thank you so much, and
thank you. Glad to do
look
it.
forward to see you sometimes soon, where we can talk about.
Oh, I'd be glad to do it.
Yes, thank you. Well, for the people who want to follow the show, we have a page on Facebook, the Jose Aliaga Show on Facebook. And also, if you would like to come and share some of your ideas about business, about the community, or any political idea, or something that you would like to share with us, it can be anything, please call me at 248-736-7163. Thank you. Have a blessed day.